Theo Usherwood, LBC's political editor, is there in the corridors. Theo, hi.
Good evening, Nigel. It is a little bit of a charade this evening at the 1922 committee.
Right.
As Mrs May walked down the corridor, one MP said that he couldn't get in, but he did support her 100%, and there was some irony, some sarcasm even in his voice. And then when Mrs May finally managed to get into the 1922 committee here on the committee corridor, committee room 14, the banging, well, they weren't just banging the desks. I think they were banging the doors. There was cheering, wanting all of us journalists outside to know that they were pledging support to the Prime Minister. You mentioned, of course, what happened in the European Parliament today when Donald Tusk stood up and said extending the transition period was all the Prime Minister's idea. The Tory MPs are angry about that. What they're also angry about is the Prime Minister's response to Jacob Rees-Mogg in the House of Commons this afternoon at PMQs, where she insisted that Britain would be leaving the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice. But we know that that simply isn't going to be happening. And lots of consternation among the Tory Brexiteers that this evening the 1922 committee is simply stage managed and that she'll limp on for another few weeks, probably even months.
She's developing a reputation for being less than truthful, Theo, because, I mean, as you say, she gave that answer to Jacob Rees-Mogg, and yet, The Sun, big story today, EU sources telling The Sun our legal requirement is that the European Court of Justice be the ultimate arbiter of EU law, and that, of course, will apply to citizens' rights and the divorce bill. How can she get away with saying things like this to her own party?
It's a good question, and the calculation that is being made in Downing Street is that her opponents don't have an agreed alternative plan. They don't have an agreed alternative leader, and that whilst they cannot rally behind somebody else, she will remain in post. Another interesting development today, perhaps not unsurprising, but it gives an indication that Theresa May wants to be in post in Downing Street in the medium to long term, is the appointment of Sir Mark Sedwill, who goes from being National Security Advisor only in the spring, stood in for Sir Jeremy Hayward, the Cabinet Secretary, and now he's taking over from Sir Jeremy Hayward as Cabinet Secretary, most powerful civil servant in the country, one of the most powerful people in the country, and he's seen very much as being allied to Theresa May, strong on security. He made a good impression when it came to the Skripal attack by the Russians earlier in the year, and very much about dealing with process, keeping the show on the road. So that's another indication that Theresa May, for her part, doesn't.
Yeah. We've lost Theo, but he's there, and I know when there's breaking news, we'll come back to him. What, you ask, is the 1922 committee. I know we sort of keep hearing this name. Well, it was set up back in October 1922, where all the Tory MPs got together and decided they would want to end the coalition with the Liberals. They brought down the government of David Lloyd George. There was a general election, and the Tories won it. So it is a place where when they're in government, all backbench MPs can go and attend the committee. It's chaired by Sir Graham Brady, and he, of course, is the man who, if he gets 48 letters, which is 15% of the parliamentary party, if he gets those 48 letters, it will trigger a motion of confidence in the leader. But only he knows how many letters he's received. He has really remarkable power in all of this. And one other thing that broke today that I think is really interesting, Evening Standard have released an Ipsos Mori poll showing that now just 19% of people in this country think the Prime Minister can pull off a good Brexit deal. 78% don't think she will. What's really interesting is that within her own party, in May of this year, 2/3 of Conservative voters thought the Prime Minister would deliver a good Brexit deal. Now, just 5 months on, 2/3 of Conservative voters think she will not deliver a good Brexit deal. So look, she's under pressure, although the one thing the Tory party generally does, it's very good at being loyal, even when it thinks it's the wrong thing to do. So they've got this meeting now, and my guess is that if she gets through this meeting and gets through the next couple of days, that she will stay as our Prime Minister, I think, for some time to come. So it is a big moment of decision. So let me ask you, you are, imagine, sitting there in that 1922 committee tonight, listening to the Prime Minister, listening to her supporters and her critics. Would replacing her as leader at this time jeopardise, in your opinion, our departure from the EU on March 29th next year? If you think, yep, it could throw Brexit off the track completely, call 0345 6060 973. If you think, no, it's the only hope we've got of getting a proper Brexit, which is what I think, of course, then text to 84850 and tell me, if you're a Tory supporting Remainer, who do you think might be the right candidate? Tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC, and watch us on Facebook from Strasbourg and comment there too. We're off to Brighton, to Mark, who's a new caller to the show. Welcome, Mark.
Hello, Nigel.
So we're a long way down the Brexit track, Mark. If we change horses right now in terms of our leader, could it jeopardise our leaving in March next year?
Yes, frankly, I think it could. I mean, I voted Brexit, and I actually voted for your former party, UKIP.
Yeah.
Well, no, I didn't. I actually voted Conservative only solely simply because there wasn't a UKIP candidate in the ward in Brighton that I'm actually on, but I would have voted UKIP had there been a candidate, just to explain that one. Yeah, I do. And I think two reasons. I think it's far too late to change horses now, and I think that the Barnier, whatever he's called, or Juncker, or both of them, will take it as a form of weakness. They'll think, oh, they're fighting like rats in a sack. We can drive a coach and horses through the Brexit negotiations, and what we've agreed, we'll renege on. So I think for two reasons, it's completely things. So I think we're stuck, but I think we do have to make sure that Theresa May is under no illusion that there will be, and I believe, and I hope to God I'm wrong, but I believe there will be, if they do renege on whichever way round this Brexit goes, bearing in mind that it was 1.1 million people, a majority, I think there will be unrest of serious proportions on the street. And I do...
Mark, there are many of us who think... There are many of us who think she's made way too many concessions already. And, OK, it's a newspaper story, but front page of a Times today says Theresa May's Brexit plan could leave Britain in a long-running, multi-year transition period, despite her promise it would only be a few months, according to leaked cabinet papers. Doesn't there come a point, Mark, where you say that the Brexit you voted for is not going to be delivered by this Prime Minister?
Well, yeah. Basically that in a nutshell, and I don't think it will happen, to be honest. So, I wish to God I was wrong, but I think there will be serious consequences. So
you think stick with her and it could be okay?
Well, I don't think we've got much choice, to be honest, because if we change horses, I said to your researcher, I think that if we were to replace, I would have David Davis as interim Prime Minister, backed up by Jacob Rees-Mogg, because at least Jacob does have some...
Thank you for that, Mark. Very good. Not the sort of language we really want at 14 minutes past 6, but hey, we're off to John in Hailsham. John, good evening.
Yeah, good evening, Nigel. I really do think if the Tory party could actually muster up the courage to change leaders at this late stage, we would have a far better chance of achieving a worthwhile Brexit, because how much longer have the British public got to carry on suffering the failed efforts of Theresa May, when all reality tells us this inept politician will only agree to a totally failed deal with Brussels. I really do feel we should change leaders at this stage.
Yep. John, so do I. You put it very clearly. I agree with you. The support for this Prime Minister amongst Conservative voters is collapsing. They are nominally 2 or 3 points ahead in the polls of the Labour Party, chiefly because of the difficulties that Jeremy Corbyn has been through. But John, like you, I don't think we're going to get the kind of Brexit we want with her as leader. Thank you. It's risky, of course, when a meeting is going on, and I do not know whether 48 letters are in or not, and I'm going to make a prediction that could make me look very stupid within the next 20 minutes to half an hour. But I think she will come out of this meeting still as leader and without there being a challenge and a vote of confidence. I've spoken to lots of Tory MPs who tell me, Nigel, she's an absolute disaster. It's hopeless. I mean, we're doing badly. We'll lose the next election. We could get Corbyn as leader. We won't get a proper Brexit. And I say, well, go on then. Have you put your letter in? Oh, well, you know, I like to be loyal to the party. Loyal to the captain that struck the iceberg. Hey, that's party politics. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. It's 6:15. As we speak, the Prime Minister is in Committee Room 14 in the House of Commons, facing backbench Conservative MPs, some of whom are trying to get up to 48 letters to trigger a vote of confidence in her leadership. Other loyalists are in there, banging their desk lids loudly, which is the tradition of that committee, which has been around now for the best part of 100 years. Max says by text, can I ask you for an early Xmas present, please? A P45 for Theresa. Max, you may want it. I don't think they're going to deliver it, but I could be made to look very silly on that prediction. Sean is calling from Nottingham and is a new caller. Sean, would getting rid of her now jeopardise Brexit and be the wrong thing to do?
I think the problem the Tories have got, Nigel, is I don't think anybody will take it off her. I think the problem that they face is she could resign tomorrow. Boris, Mark, Davis, I don't think any of them would touch it with a barge pole because it's the poison chalice.
On.
No.
Oh, Sean, come on, the chance to be Prime Minister.
I'll tell you tomorrow, if she resigned tomorrow, they would scuttle away because nobody wants Brexit on their CV because it's a poison chalice. I would put my house on it. I'd put my house on it.
Hang on, Sean. You're not seriously telling me that if the Prime Minister says, that's enough, I'm off walking in Snowdonia for the next 10 years, I'm done, you're not telling me that nobody would put their names forward? Because they would, wouldn't they?
I'm telling you, you would not get any of the big hitters. Boris, Mark, Davis, you might be left with Ledson, at a push, maybe Hunt, but I don't think the people that Brexiteers want will not take the job because they don't want it on the CV. Otherwise, why isn't Boris made it obvious and called for no confidence himself? Why haven't they done that? Surely
Sean, I've been urging him to do it ever since the Chequers Agreement back in July. I'm told the reason he won't do it is that he who wields the knife never wears the crown, and that's what the history of Tory politics shows. Think back perhaps to Michael Heseltine. Look, Sean, I get your bigger point, that it would be a very tough time to become Prime Minister. But, I mean, given where Theresa May is taking the Brexit process and taking the Tory party, isn't just to sort of stay there and watch your party head for disaster. Sean's gone. He's had enough of us. Let's go to Lawrence in Colchester. Hi, Lawrence.
Hello, sir. How are you?
Yeah, good to speak to you again. So, Lawrence, what do you think they're going to do?
Nigel, a couple of weeks ago, I said to you she'd be gone.
I know you did.
You're wrong. I'm wrong. You are right, sir. She's not going anywhere. I sent an email. It's so upsetting, Nigel. You don't know how upset I am. I don't know whether I'm upset or angry. I just don't know. But we are only going to come out in name, sir, unless Davis, who keeps barking all the time, steps up and takes the challenge. I wrote an email. I wrote
Lawrence,
an email.
I said to you, Lawrence, didn't I, that I'd come and buy you oysters in Colchester if she was gone, and she's not. So I haven't got to do.
Sir.
I haven't got to do that. Lawrence, I'm going to keep moving. Thank you, Steve in Manchester. Steve, is it the right time to change horses?
Hi, Nigel. Yeah. Yes, it most certainly is. I'm beginning to lose a lot of faith actually with a lot of the big hitters like Rees-Mogg. I like Rees-Mogg, but it's getting to be full of hot air, Nigel. The rhetoric that he comes out with, I'm like, nobody impressed with him.
Well, Steve, I was with him the other week down in Devon, and he said, if any deal, anything like Chequers, is put to the House of Commons, I will vote against it. So he was pretty decisive on that.
Okay. But Who's going to be chucking their name in the hat for, if they remove her tonight, who's going to be chucking like the other caller said, who's going to step up to the plate here? I think there are a load of Tory wets there, Nigel, I'll be honest.
Well, I think this is it, isn't it? That we hear on LBC and elsewhere, we hear the names of Anna Soubry, who's a very, very passionate Remainer. We hear the names of Jacob Rees-Mogg, who's a very passionate Leaver. What we don't hear are, perhaps 150 Tory MPs who are in the middle, who have no particular view on Brexit, who rather like being members of Parliament, who are in most cases, Steve, what I would call career politicians.
Exactly.
And they will just go with the flow.
They want to stay on the payroll.
Yeah.
That's all it is with them, that they just want to stay on the payroll. I'm politically homeless at the minute. I voted Tory in the last election because of Brexit. They were promising me a Brexit that I wanted, a kind of style Brexit that I wanted. Now, a little bit like, I suppose, the life of Brian here, but where should we go, Nigel, after this? If they're not,
where is the Messiah? Where is the Messiah?
Well, you are the Messiah.
Oh, get out of it. No, I'm not. I'm a naughty boy. Steve, I think you and I are in the same position on this. We both think May should go, but we both think she won't. Thank you. Richard says the UK's negotiating team are a bunch of Euro fanatics negotiating. So how on earth can the millions who voted Brexit have any faith in a sensible result? Richard, I have been very critical today of the British Civil Service. I've got some very good information suggesting that actually when it comes to the Irish border, they've been using it as a weapon to keep us in the customs union, not the other way around. And I do, when it comes to Brexit, believe they are the enemy within. I know that the editor of the Financial Times says I'm speaking like Stalin, but that is what I believe. Stuart in Malden is a new caller to the show. Welcome, Stuart.
Good evening. I think she ought to stay because it's imperative that we actually leave on the 29th of March. Leaving is irrevocable. Therefore, should we leave on the 29th of March, whatever happens, we will have to reapply. Now, I am desperate to thwart yesterday's men, the Pan Yang drums, the Tory Remainers who are desperate for us to remain. By leaving on the 29th of March, which she has promised, that will thwart them all.
So the point then being that even if we leave on a very weak Brexit, at least we've left the treaties.
We have left. We can then renegotiate our leaving. The first basis is to leave.
But
we have struggled for 43 years to get out of this. Let's wait another 5 months and leave. Then can go on.
But she's surprised us in many ways. I mean, none of us thought there'd be a transition period at all. Now we hear it's going to be 3 years. All of us are stunned that she's now prepared to give away, well over 50 billion, maybe nearer 60 billion sterling during that period. What's to say her next trick is to say we're going to suspend Article 50 for another year?
Well, that is, of course, is a nightmare scenario. But if you take her at face value, she has repeatedly said, almost daily, we are leaving on the 29th of March 2019.
I know.
Now, either the woman is completely two-faced, which I don't believe, by any stretch of the imagination. She is working with her hands tied because of Tory Remainers and, of course, an obdurate EU. But let's get the 29th of March out of the way and then go from there.
OK, no, fine. And I think that's very much Michael Gove's position too. Carol is calling from Twickenham. Hi, Carol.
Oh, hello. Hi. You're in a lovely position, aren't you, Mr. Farage? You know, you're behind the fence. You've got absolutely no responsibility, but you've got loads to say. But it takes a woman to try and get us out of this mess. Because there's nobody else.
It could have been anyone, Carol. It could have been anyone.
No,
I mean, Boris stood.
No, absolutely not. Oh, my God, you are joking. It takes a woman to do this. But what does it take for people to see what's going on in this country? What does it take? What do we have to do to make people see that it is not working?
Carol,
if
she'd stuck,
you're
Carol.
so blinkered, it's amazing.
Blinkered? Well, I tell you what, I'm many things, but I don't think blinkered. I mean, Carol, if she'd stuck to all the things she said in her general election manifesto and indeed in her Lancaster House speech, I would be her biggest supporter. But she hasn't. She's broken her word repeatedly on issue after issue. That is my problem with her.
Broken her word?
Absolutely.
Do you realise what she's got to do? No, you don't, do you? Because you're just sitting on the fence, making all these barbed comments.
Oh, I'm not sitting on the fence,
no
Carol.
Problems.
I'm not sitting on the fence. If I sat within 10 yards of Donald Tusk this morning when he explained to us that it was the Prime Minister who'd applied for the extension up to 3 years for the transition period, despite the fact she'd given us a different impression. I've lost confidence in her, Carol.
No, you never had confidence in her in the first place. Because you knew that this was on. We were on to nothing. And
do you know what, Carol? Carol, I promise you that when she gave the Lancaster House speech on this show, I said, I never thought I'd say this, but I'm praising the Prime Minister to the rafters. And I did say that, and she didn't deliver. Carol, thank you. Different point of view. Stay with us. Let's find out what happens to Mrs. May. You'll hear it here first. For now, you're listening to the Nigel Farage Show. It's 6:30 and... Well, Theresa May is there. She's in Committee Room 14, and outside in the corridor is LBC's political editor, Theo Usherwood. Theo, is she getting a very easy ride or not?
She's just left Committee Room 14, along with members of her party. The meeting's just broken up. More loud banging and cheering. Depending on your point of view, Andrew Leadsom left, the Commons leader left, saying that she was very impressed. Really good speech given by the Prime Minister. Michael Fabricant, Lichfield MP, also spoke to reporters afterwards and was full of effusive praise for the Prime Minister.
In fact, everybody else was saying we need unity. And, of course, lots of people were saying how the language used over last weekend, was disgusting and misogynist and all the rest of it. And I think we all felt that way. She lives the fight, I'm quite sure. Possibly to the next election, I don't know. But I wouldn't be surprised. If she gets a good deal, she'll be a heroine.
Michael
there you are, Theo.
There.
So basically, there are not 48 letters, are there?
There are not 48 letters at the moment, no. There had been claims earlier on today, that Downing Street had even slipped in some of the letters to bring it up to 44, knowing that by getting so close to the threshold of 48, it would put off other MPs from going over the tipping point, hitting that number of 48. And, of course, Graham Brady has promised, that's the chairman of the 1920s, he has promised to ring round everybody who has submitted a letter and asking them whether it still stands, and at which point those MPs could withdraw that letter.
Sort of Theo, does the letter still stand, and do they really want to be reselected next time round? That kind of conversation, do you mean?
That kind of conversation. of course, the Graham Brady is completely independent of Downing Street as chairman of the 1922 committee. His loyalty is firmly to the backbenchers, but he goes into number 11, where the chief whip, Julian Smith, resides on a daily basis. And he is very secretive about the number of letters that have been submitted. He hasn't even reportedly told his wife how many letters he has in his possession.
OK. Theo, can we say the Prime Minister has survived?
Yes, we can say the Prime Minister has survived. What we can't say, Nigel, is how long she's survived for.
No, OK. All right, Theo, thank you. Well, there you have it. Predictably, party unity. That's all that matters. Even if the leader is taking you in completely the wrong direction, party unity. And in many ways, that's what you get with the first-past-the-post electoral system. Right, we'll come back to that in a moment, but very important breaking news story in the USA, a series of explosive devices being sent to Obama, the Clintons. I even understand one has gone to CNN's offices. I think George Soros even was mentioned. I'm going to Harry Horton, correspondent with Feature Story News in Washington, D.C. Harry, good afternoon over there. How are you?
I'm very well. Good afternoon, Nigel.
Right, what is the extent of this?
Well, so far we know that earlier this week on Monday, police in New York intercepted a suspected explosive device that was addressed to the liberal billionaire philanthropist George Soros. Then later on Tuesday, there was another device that was intercepted by police. That one was addressed to Hillary Clinton, the former Democratic nominee for president, of course. Early on Wednesday, just a few hours ago, a package was intercepted that was addressed to former President Barack Obama. And then later, another one was intercepted that was addressed to the CNN headquarters in New York. The headquarters at CNN have since been evacuated. They are still evacuated there as police further investigate what may have gone on. We've just had a briefing from authorities in New York. They are investigating whether or not these devices were connected in some way, whether they were sent from the same person, whether or not there's more devices out there. There are reports of other devices in other parts of the country. So you can imagine amongst many liberal politicians in particular, because that's what connects these politicians.
Yeah, I mean,
so
these are all opponents of President Trump's, aren't they?
Absolutely. They are people who have been very critical of President Trump. CNN, of course, is a frequent target of President Trump's criticism. They are a big target of criticism from his supporters at campaign rallies. I should say that the White House has quickly come out and condemned these attempted attacks.
Okay.
We haven't heard from President Trump yet, apart from on Twitter, where he retweeted a statement from the vice president criticizing this. But clearly a state of high alert at the moment among media organizations and among liberal politicians who have been critical of President Trump. The authorities still trying to ascertain whether there's more devices out there.
And Harry, if these devices have all been sent through, postal companies, surely it can't be very difficult to find out who sent them.
Well, that will be something that the authorities try to ascertain. I mean, as I say, because there's been so many devices sent out, there's lots of clues to work with there. The Secret Service, who check all the mail for former presidents and former secretaries of state, they intercepted those devices addressed to President Obama and Hillary Clinton. So they've got a lot of information to work with. They clearly think that there's some link between these devices at the moment, but they don't know exactly what that is. But as I say, lots more details coming out hour by hour here. So I expect in the next few hours we'll get more updates and we'll be able to be a little bit closer to finding out who's responsible.
Thank you. That was Harry Horton from Feature Story News in Washington, D.C., reporting on this absolutely reprehensible use of mailing companies to send out, and from what I can understand, they're kind of pipe bombs that have been sent out to some very senior and some very senior retired current public and past public figures in the USA, all opponents of President Trump's. Let's see where that story goes. So, Theresa May has survived. Do you think, for the last 20 minutes of this debate, the Conservative Party have done the right thing? They have shown unity behind their leader. Is that the right thing for Brexit? I'm going to High Wycombe to ask Thomas, a new caller to this show, that very question.
Evening.
Good evening.
Not a chance.
All right.
This unity will last for about 4 or 5 days. The Messiah that you keep talking about is the Attorney General, Graham Cox. He can bring the party together again.
Geoffrey Cox.
Geoffrey Cox.
Yes.
He can bring the party together again. And we need a period of a couple of years, I guess, we've got to the next election. But what I want to propose is that we skunk these guys, Barnier, Juncker, Tusk, and we have another referendum, but this time it's on, should we become the 51st state of the United States?
What? Are you serious, Thomas?
Absolutely.
And what percentage support do you reckon that's going to get?
I think we'll get the same kind of support that you got in the last referendum.
Well, I won't vote. I won't vote for it. And my first job with an American company was 36 years ago. I visit America regularly. I know the president a bit. I love America, but I wouldn't want to become the 51st state, Thomas.
Well, let me turn around and ask you the question. Why wouldn't you?
because I want us to be independent. I don't want us to be America's poodle or Juncker's poodle. I want us to be free.
Individual states are relatively independent, much more independent than we are as a member of the EU.
Well, I do agree with that. I grant you, I do agree with that. They have far more autonomy than, say, Italy at the moment, whose budget had been rejected. Yep. I get that. Yep. Thomas, I've got to tell you, I know you're saying this with sincerity, but I promise you it's an absolute non-starter. All right? It really is. Thank you. I'm off to Poole to speak to David, another new caller. Hi, David.
Hello, Nigel. Had a lovely meeting in Bournemouth the other night. Thank you for that.
Oh, I'm pleased you were there. I really am. And your first-time call to LBC?
Yeah. Well,
so what?
I think she's got to go, to be honest, Nigel. I think the Tory party have been absolute disgrace in even a whole referendum, right up with the scare stories from George Osborne, bringing in an American president, to having no plan afterwards because they thought they could manipulate us enough to be able to stay in. That's what I think. And I think...
But David, this was a key moment, and she survived. What's your message to those Tory MPs?
Well, I'm like the gentleman earlier on in the evening. If she fails us on this, I have nowhere else to go. I can't vote Tory, I can't vote Labour, and I can't vote Lib Dems. So I really have nowhere else to go.
David, if Brexit's messed up, I think there are millions of you who are going to feel like that. David, thank you very much for your kind words about the meeting and for your call. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show here in LBC. It is now 6:46. Mrs May comes through the 1922 committee with flying colours. MPs like Michael Fabricant saying maybe she'll lead them into the next general election. Have they done the right thing, or would it have been better and braver to change horses? I'm going to Torquay to speak to Jennifer, a new caller to this show. Hi, Jennifer.
Hello, Nigel. May I say I was absolutely gutted to miss you and Jacob Rees-Mogg live in Torquay a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, I was down there. The weather was terrible. Oh, didn't she? I mean, English Riviera lashing with rain and gales blowing, but never mind. So, Jennifer, she's survived. For now, at least, she's survived.
Of course she's survived. It's part of the agenda. She was a Remainer. If you want a Brexit, one does not have a Prime Minister who voted Remain or a Chancellor of the Exchequer that voted Remain. It's absolutely ridiculous, but there has not been a credible alternative to be presented, and it's about time there was a new party that isn't driven by the agenda, because the real power brokers control both sides. Labour or Conservative doesn't make much difference.
Do you really feel the whole thing's that stitched up, Jennifer?
Oh, God, yes. Listen, Nigel, there are a large and ever-growing number of people who are awakened to what's really going on in the world. And once you know the game, it's easy to join the dots. What we need is a cross-party. Pull the best people out of each party. I mean, like, for instance, Labour, Kate Hoey, who was UKIP, Jacob Rees-Mogg. Now, I like him because he's polite, he's got a sense of humour.
So you want, I mean, Jennifer, you want a proper Eurosceptic party. That's really the message, isn't it?
It's not just about Eurosceptic, it's an anti-New World Order party, is what I want.
No, I understand it. Jennifer, thank you. I'm sorry you missed the meeting. Thank you. Now, talking of that New World Order, I can't wait to leave the European Union, and here's why. I mean, they even rewrite history. There was a big brouhaha in the European Parliament this morning. Saeed Kamal, Conservative MEP, said that National Socialism, Nazism, had its roots in the left of politics, and people didn't like that. And so the President of the European Parliament, Mr. Tajani, tried to calm things. This is what he said.
I don't think there's any people who are nostalgic for Nazism or the communist dictatorship from the Soviet bloc, two ghastly and devastating political systems which caused terrible wounds for Europe. Thank God these two dictatorships have vanished thanks to the European Union.
Laughable. Laughable.
It's really not a laughing matter. It's really not a laughing matter. You should respect the ideas of other people even if you don't agree with them. Laughter is the last refuge of the stupid.
There you go.
You should learn to respect other people if you want respect yourself, Mr. Farage. Learn to respect other people.
His face was getting very red by now.
That's what democracy is all about.
Veins popping out of the neck.
You seem to be someone who's nostalgic for dictatorships yourself if you don't respect other people.
Nice.
You've got no right not to respect other people, so please keep quiet.
I think under Rule 164 of our revered procedures, I am allowed to respond to the comments you made as President of the Parliament, some of them personally insulting. Maybe you have a bit of a problem with your temper. I will ignore the personal comments you've made about me, but I will say this. We do seem this morning to be struggling just a little bit with our history. To claim, Mr. Tajani, that the European Union brought about the downfall of Nazism and Soviet communism isn't only laughable, it is very ungracious and deeply insulting to the United States of America, who made massive sacrifices so that Europe could be free twice in the 20th century, and to a slightly lesser extent, the United Kingdom, as 30,000 British dead in Italy will attest.
Well, there you are. Amazing. They've rewritten history. The European Union got rid of the Nazis and got rid of the Soviet communists. That's what they believe. I can't wait for us to leave because they believe this rubbish. Andrew is calling from Bourne End in Bucks and is a new caller. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you, Nigel. I want to qualify this by saying that I voted Brexit. And the reason that I voted Brexit was the Maastricht Treaty, because I wanted out of the European community when it became the EC, when it became the European Union, I wanted out because I believe in trade across the world, right? So if we bring Jacob Rees-Mogg or anybody like him into leader of the Conservative Party, we will go back to the 19th century. You must be aware of his Christian values. You must be aware of his views on family and politics. You know him very well.
Andrew, hang on. Number one, that wouldn't be the 19th century, but it might be the 1950s, his critics would argue. But Andrew, what is wrong in having a political leader who is a practicing Roman Catholic and who believes strongly in the teachings of that church?
Nothing wrong at all. I used to be a Roman Catholic, but I'm an atheist and an agnostic now. So the point that I'm trying to make is that we must move forward. If Theresa May lost this little battle that she had, it looks as though she's won, we would have moved backwards. And the 2-year transition that she wanted, and it's now been proved that she asked for, or her negotiation team asked for.
And it's now 3 years. It's now 3 years.
Well, if it's 3 years, in my view, I'm a Brexiter, okay? So I am actually on the side of getting out of Europe, out of the EC. What I want as a person who needs to earn money and pay my tax and put my children through university is I want a transition that is best for everybody. If that means that we have to have an extra 3 years to negotiate this properly, then I'm all for that, because you do not negotiate by slamming the door on you. You're a businessman, Nigel. You're a former businessman.
I know. And what worries me, Andrew, is that she's using this to be almost never-ending transition. And the truth of it is, it'll go up to the next general election. That's my big fear.
Well, if that does, then the people will vote, and they'll vote her out. So we have that situation there. But so close to March, we do not need a change of leadership in the negotiation team.
I understand that, Andrew. You made the point very clearly indeed. I've got time for one last quick call. Barry in Chingford. Hi, Barry.
Good evening, Nigel. Nigel, if I was Theresa May, I would have begged you to have joined with me in helping to gather together a negotiating team. Everybody that you thought was a genuine Brexiteer, we should have been part of a negotiating team and negotiated on behalf of Theresa.
Well, do you know, Barry, it would have been magnificent if we could have put aside party differences and we could have said, here we've got a very important thing to do in the national interest to respect the will of the people, but sadly, it hasn't happened. Barry, I want to thank you. I want to thank everybody for being on for the last hour, an hour in which we saw Theresa May surviving quite comfortably, by the sounds of it, as Tory party leader, party loyalty being all. Now, tomorrow at 6, I won't be here. I'm travelling, but Labour's deputy leader and MP for West Bromwich East, Tom Watson, will be here in my seat to take your calls on the big stories of the day. Good luck with that, Tom. I'll be back Sunday morning from 10. Tonight at 10, it's Tom Swarbrick, but up next, it's Ian Dale.
Nigel, thank you very much. Coming up on the